Today on the DCC Guy, I want to go back and take a look at this lifelike E6 locomotive that was the subject of the July 2017 DCC corner column. As a reminder, I installed a WOWSound decoder in this locomotive. Now the reason I used the WOWSound was because it allows you to configure the decoder to produce the sounds of the dual prime movers that were used in these locomotives. E-units produced by EMD throughout the 1950s and 40s, late 40s, had two 567B prime movers in them. And straight from the factory, they probably were very well synchronized. But once they were on the road and working and accumulating mileage, going through overhauls with replacement of mechanical and electrical components, they started to get out of synchronization. So typically what you would hear was when these locomotives started to ramp up to head out of town, you would have first one prime mover ramp up, followed a second or two or three later by the second prime mover in the locomotive. And multiply this by, what, 3 or 4 locomotives on the head end of the train, and it gave quite a distinctive sound, which you can replicate in your fleet. The great thing about the WOWSound decoder is you can control the amount of time between the two prime movers ramping up, anywhere up to 10 seconds delay. So that's one of the things. After I finish here, I'm going to put this locomotive back down on the track, and then I'll run it through some manual notching changes so you can hear the distinctive sound as first one prime mover ramps up and then the second. After we're finished listening to this locomotive go through its paces, then I'm going to turn on the computer and I'll show you how to program this in Decoder Pro, because it's fairly simple to turn on the dual prime mover option. It's a little bit more complicated when you get around to programming the more difficult timing sequences, because that involves using 4 separate CVs. So let me go ahead. I'm going to step off camera now and get this locomotive back on the track and ready to run. Okay, now that you've heard the dual prime mover sound, let's take a look at how you activate it on the WOWSound decoder, and then we'll go ahead and program the time delay. So I've already queued up the Southern E6A, and let's hit the program button. Okay, center this into the window here. Okay, now where do you find the dual prime mover option? Well, since it is a sound function, let's look under the sound pane. And if you scroll down here on the right hand side, you'll see dual prime movers. And I've already got a check mark in there because it's obviously activated, but that's all you have to do is click on this dual prime movers button and that activates it for you, and then write your changes on the sheet. Okay, so it's done that. Now, the next thing you want to do is go to CVs. Now, let me point out, the default setting for the WOWSound decoder time delay is about 2.5 seconds. Now, I have found that somewhere between 2 and 4 seconds is perfectly adequate. So if you're happy with something like that, then stick with the default. But if you want to change it, you can change it to anything between 0 and a value of 20. A value of 20, you divide that by 2, and that gives you 10 seconds. So you could go up to a 10-second delay. So whatever value you want, whatever time delay you want, you just multiply it by 2, and that's the value we're going to enter into CV204. So let's go ahead, bring up the CV programming window here for TCS. And we've got 201. Okay, there's a table on page 27 of the WOWSound DCC programming guide. And in there it's got the dual prime mover delays. It says for a value, for CV value 201, enter a value of 4. And then for 202, enter a value of 22. For 203, you enter a value of 0, which it's obviously already got in there. And here, I'm going to stick with my option of a 2-second delay. So I'm going to enter a value of 4 here. Okay? Then all you have to do is hit Write Full Sheet. You have to hit Write Full Sheet because you don't want to miss this value for 203, which was already 0. And if you only hit Write Changes on the sheet, it's going to skip that one. So you got to do these, and you've got to do all of them in the proper order. So that's all it takes. As soon as you've done that, you can then crank up the locomotive. If it's on the main line, or if you're programming on the programming track, you can move it onto the main, and you should be able to go for it. That gives you a better feeling now for what I was describing in the July 2017 DCC corner column. Go out and pick up a WOWSound decoder and install it in your units and see if it doesn't give you that distinctive sound of the dual prime movers ramping up at the head of a consist. Have fun.